Hi, everybody. I'm just opening up the Zoom right now, and I want to welcome those that might be with us today. And hopefully those that are using Zoom will be able to access the this program today. Uh, the the view today that many have when dealing with life and many aspects of life, particularly as many of us have been or are looking at the issues of litigation and child custody matters. These plague us, and it's we often hear from friends and relatives, colleagues, people who are having the uh, uh, and bear with me a second because I have people in the waiting room and I don't know how to open it. This is so funny. Not very funny. Um, but what what really motivated me to look at the issue today that I wanted to bring forward for you is that issue of when is it enough? When is it enough? And when it is enough is a question which is representative of a major issue. And that issue, of course, is both an emotional issue as well as a social issue. Most of us, when we become frustrated, it's due to our inability to cope with a situation, or it's with our inability to really resolve a situation. And this can be the matter of illness. It could be the matter of child custody. It could be the matter of a relationship. Uh, Anything, if you would, that matters to us is an issue that must be addressed. We want resolution. Our goal, no matter what the role we have in our home, in the workplace, and in any setting where we have obligation, responsibility, or joy in participating, we have responsibilities. Our responsibilities are to those who are within our environment, within our surroundings, those who we must answer to, those who we give direction to, as well as for ourselves. And as we look historically at how family has changed, since most of you, as well as myself, are concerned about the matters of family, we need to consider perspective. And I write about this frequently. I write about this. I've written about this in my book, and I've discussed it very often. That in order for us to feel confident and comfortable and in control of any situation, we need to feel that we can resolve what is before us. And there is so much that is not within our control. And so, as we have discussed in past programs, we've looked at what we can do to cope. And I think if we take a look at that question again, when will it end? First, I want you to know that, and I'm not going to say who shared that with me, but it was in conversation with someone who was text messaging me and was clearly very frustrated by their circumstances, which dealt with parental alienation, being a targeted parent. And so for many of us who have had that experience, or know of parental alienation, we know that this is an issue. And this is a huge issue. And it's an issue that is not easily resolved. And for most parents who seek court resolution for it, it will not be resolved to date. And that's because the systems that we must use have chosen, I believe, after many years of trying to educate the systems, I believe, have chosen not to address it. They will address it if there is child abuse. They will address it if there is domestic violence, but they will not address it or consider it anything other than a complaint by an absent parent, as is the term used in Florida, or a non-custodial parent, which is used most frequently in other states, or a non-residential parent. So when is it enough? We ask this question about so much in our lives. Again, whether we're dealing with illness, we're dealing with noisy neighbors, we're dealing with children that don't want to go to bed, we're dealing with a spouse that is not listening to us, doesn't seem to show that they care. If we're struggling with at work and we want to get recognized for what we believe are achievements, accomplishments we've made in the workplace, and we'd like to be recognized, certainly we'd like to be acknowledged formally for our accomplishments, and in the workplace we certainly would like to be recognized with a raise, a financial increase, more responsibility, a promotion. There's much that we look for. And so when we ask this question, when is it enough? I want to suggest to you that we ask that question for two reasons. One is because we have expectations which may be realistic or unrealistic, but we have expectations, and therefore those expectations are in conflict with the reality. The reality has not provided the resolution. The expectations continue. We are frustrated, and we're not sure how to further navigate. We don't know if we have the energy to further navigate. We don't want to further navigate. We feel compelled to make that decision. But because of that frustration, because of that difference, we ask that when will it be enough? When we consider how any society has evolved, it's evolved out of frustrations. Forget the use of technology in helping societies advance. The frustrations are in our own time expectancy. When we look at the expectations that we have and the reality, there is a time frame in between. And that time frame is the frustration, as evidenced by that question, when is it enough? And so we need to find that perspective that allows us to qualify that question and say, it will be enough when I can achieve X, Y, and Z. And if we break down that timeline between the reality and our expectations, if we break it down into tasks, then our time becomes more manageable. Now, that is a very big part of answering that question. When is it enough? We all ask, when is it enough? We may not ask that question at the same and for the same reasons, but we ask this question very frequently. Why? Because we become frustrated. And when we become frustrated, that's when we again need to pause. Those of you that have been kind to join me weekly know that there is a procedure that I advocate, and that procedure includes the matter of taking a pause. You must take a pause. In any research, there is pause. In any military effort, there is a pause, at least momentary, until the natural response can kick in. But we need to pause. Why? Because we need to get a handle on what is the reality and what are the factors and what factors do we control and what do we not? What do we feel that we cannot control? And those factors can be more frustrating than those that we can control. Certainly if you're playing a ball game and every person on that team has a different position, which means a different role, but together the opportunity to increase your victories, increase your wins, to score points will be much better actualized. As an individual going through any stage of grief, and if we respond to loss, whether it's due to the death of a loved one, if we're dealing with a divorce, a loss of children, if a loss of a relationship, if we look at all those losses that we internalize, there are certain things that we cannot control. And it is our attitude, as I spoke about last week, I believe, that we can control and that will help us navigate. But when is it enough? It's that factor of time, which I really want to focus a little bit on today for you, because we lose it. We lose the sense of time. We lose the sense, we know what urgency is, we do. But everyone's priorities are different. And the way that we achieve and obtain resolution or obtain the objectives that we have is going to differ one person to the other because of our skill set and because of the priorities that we have that are different from one to the other. And our priorities are going to be adjusted and readjusted based on the obstacles that we have in achieving any of those steps in our timeline until we can overcome and achieve those goals. The very difficult thing for us to do, of course, is pause. We cannot pause easily when we're angry, when we're depressed, when we're feeling fear and anxiety. These are emotions that recur in every situation that is a troubling one for us, to a minimal degree, to a maximum degree. Those are very, very strong emotions which can cause, not pause. And if there's one thing that I continue to urge you to do, that is something I struggle with also, and that is to pause. We need to pause so that we can see what are the next steps that we must take in order to achieve what we wish for, what we believe is attainable. If we don't pause, particularly when we've had an obstacle in front of us, then we're not going to maximize our response. As I said last week about going around, going above, going through, it will not happen. It will not happen effectively. We must pause. So when is it enough? One very glib and unsatisfactory answer that I want to share with you, but that answer is when either you've achieved or when you've given up. When you've achieved is when your efforts can cease. When you've given up and you've chosen to give up, you have not achieved. You've simply stopped spending your energy. You've stopped spending your resources. And that could be as equally devastating to you as is the challenge of going above, around, and through the obstacles that present themselves. So when is it enough is a question that needs to be answered by each individual, because their answer, their response is very different one to the other. What can you tolerate? What is resisting your efforts? What skills do you have? What resources do you have? And where is your mental attitude? Are all the factors which must further be considered if you ask the question, when is it enough? That question bothered me terribly. It bothered me terribly. Why? Because I am haunted. I am haunted by my own efforts when I was, and I am a targeted parent, but when I fought for my children in court at a time when the courts knew nothing about parental alienation, they did not want to understand that both parents have the right in being in their children's lives, and they did not care except to see that you spent all your money. And that's the reality. But my frustration is that after 5 years of litigation, 5 years of representing my desire to achieve a relationship with my children that was denied me, 5 years was the mark. I could not bear it anymore. And that was a decision that I made. And each of you must make decisions relating to all aspects of your life. We need to ask not only when is it enough, but when will it be enough? And that, friends, is a far better question. When will it be enough? Because that brings in the answers that give you examination of all those factors that I have discussed, and helping you determine if you have the resources, if you have the stamina, if you have the will, and if you have the system that will permit you to achieve, to at least make bold efforts in attaining what you feel is very, very important. I'm getting some questions now. I think you can see them on Facebook, and I'm glad for that. And and we're going to have many different and individualized issues. You're welcome to email me. I will try to assist you. I also do coaching, and I'm certainly available. But I think the most important thing that we can do is create our own emotional and physical knapsack. What is that emotional and physical knapsack? It is your container of resources. All the emotional resources and all the financial and physical resources that you have. All those that can help you achieve what it is you seek. I had attorneys for a period of time, and I thought that they would be helpful, and I did not find them to be so, and clearly I did not attain what I thought was appropriate and right and fair. And this is an example for you. But as you ask yourself, not only when is it enough, but when will it be enough? That will help you better prepare, even to change the approach you have been making in dealing with any life situation, with any challenge, with any goal, with any desire. If you ask yourself, when will it be enough? you need to pause and think, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? Am I being premature in asking the question? And am I using all the resources that are necessary in achieving what I want to achieve? Frequently, it's no. And we're blind to that. So having conversation with those who have had experience with what we're dealing with on an individual basis, speaking with those who can bring in the skills and resources, whether it's legal or psychological, whether it's practical, whether you're dealing with procedural matters with school system or with doctors. You need to know if you're doing as much as you can and in as an efficient way as you can. And the only way that you will get answers to those questions are to consult with those people who have the skills or have the experience or both and can give you a truer appraisal of what you're engaging in. Pardon me. We can create many problems for ourselves. We can create mental health problems for ourselves when we feel frustrated, and we can create serious physical problems for ourselves if we don't take care of our mental health. And as I was preparing for my dialogue with you now, I had a number of thoughts with respect to mind-body connections that you need to know about and you need to be conscious of, because, and as we have looked at in prior meetings and prior programs, we've looked at self-care, the role of self-care. But when you ask, when is it enough? And as I advise you to ask, when will it be enough? You have to have the mental fortitude, the positive attitude, the clarity, and the strength, the internal, the emotional strength to be able to put everything together in order to give you that success on your ball field, on your court. It's very important that we step back and think of our attitude as it affects our physical condition. If you are not physically prepared to play ball, you ain't going to succeed. And if you're not physically prepared for litigation or for dealing with the loss of a spouse, the loss of a relationship with children, or loss of a job, if you don't take care of yourself physically, emotionally, you will further suffer. And nothing is easy, friends, except giving criticism, giving suggestions. That's the easy stuff. The journey is not the easy part, but preparing for it will make it less of a burden and much more effective and more meaningful. Now, let me bring you back to someone you may have heard of. Her name is Louise Hay. And Louise Hay, I found out today, was not born with that name. She changed her name because she suffered rape and child abuse and could not deal with it. She ran away from home. She moved to New York. And as a young teenager, she was able to struggle. We're all able to struggle, but she struggled through through college. She dropped out, but she became a model. And she used her success in modeling to change her way of thinking even more than she did. If you read Louise Hay, and I encourage you, she's the author of nearly 20 books. She is what we may call a modern day thinker and motivator. And anyone that has survived loss is, I believe, far more motivating than someone who has not. There's integrity, there's believability, there's experience. And I think if we look for models in anything that we do, and particularly in forming our mind and looking at creating and navigating, those steps that we need to achieve, as I said in the beginning, then in order to do that, we want to get guidance from someone that has either been there or has helped those who have been there. And Louise Hay had been there in the most abusive of ways. And I want to read some of her thinking because it really resonates, with me. And one thing she said, and let me share this the first, grief, which is defined by many different people, it's explained and it is dealt with in many different ways as outlined by people who have suffered grief, who have studied grief, who have counseled grief. Grief is different and unique for each person. Everyone's loss is personal, and everyone's loss is impactful in ways that none of us can relate. We may group ourselves by sharing loss of spouses. We may group ourselves by sharing loss that is due to divorce. We may group ourselves by sharing the loss that may relate to children or to parents. Trying to find that way by being immersed with those also who are stumbling and feel as you do. So what did Louise Hay say? Here's one quote, that grief is a matter of the heart and soul. Grieve your loss, allow it in, and spend time with it. And I believe this is really fundamental in all that we do in order to get a handle, as is said, on any matter that presents itself to us that we recognize is a challenge. It's something we want to achieve. It's something that we have had no experience with. We have to wrestle. We have to manipulate. We have to take in the guidance and the words and the experience of those who perhaps are our peers, perhaps have gone through experiences, others who have had leadership in helping people navigate through these very dark and deep waters. But it's unique for each of us, and we have to be very discerning. We have to be very discerning, not close-minded, but we must be discerning. Listen to what is said to us, view what is shown us, but most importantly, feel what is in here, what is visceral, what you are physically responding to. I'm not talking about the heart. I'm not talking about the conscious self. I'm talking about the subconscious, which presents itself in our bodily responses to what is happening around us. Grief is unique. All the challenges that all the examples that I've shared is unique. Each is unique for each of us, where our responses are unique to those challenges. But the methodology and that journey that we need to travel can be assisted by those, as I've said, who have traveled, who are traveling, and who understand it and can share those resources in helping us push through and achieve what it is that we want. You know, one of the major themes that I speak about in my book, and I want to thank Paul Kiss from Pennsylvania very much for sharing a copy of my book there. Thank you so much, Paul. But and what I often speak about, as well as write, is that process of acknowledgement. You must acknowledge, where are you in your life right now, and let those feelings manifest. Let the ideas you have manifest. They must reach up into your conscious self, because that gives us understanding. And with understanding, we're then able to chart out or to explore paths that may help us, again, take those steps that we need to achieve what we believe we want to or need to achieve. But once we acknowledge where we're at, and that gets into our conscious self, then we can recognize, again, where we wish to go. We don't have to have the answers now or tomorrow, how we're going to get there. That's all part of the process. That's part of your homework on a daily basis. It's part of your homework on a daily basis. How are we going to get there? And again, the priorities that we make for each of these steps may change, may disappear, based on the information we get from those, as I mentioned several times, who are experienced with what we're seeking to accomplish, experienced in giving guidance to those who have sought what we wish to accomplish, and have been involved in the process themselves. So understand that life is complicated. And if you want simple answers, or if you want answers, study math. Math has answers, unless you're in much higher levels of the field, which is, you know, looking into black holes and interstellar and physics. But life is very complicated, and we complicate life ourselves. We make it more difficult. And I say that because I have looked back now and seen how I have also made my own life more difficult. But that is life. That is our journey. And it's reaching out for those resources that are going to give us the strength and the clarity to move forward. In the last few days, I have viewed a video, and if you make note of this woman's name, if you know of people who have lost a spouse, if you're interested in how someone who has endured such an incredible change in their life, I would suggest that you look for this video, and there are others similar to it. But this woman's name is Nora, Nora, Nora McInerney. Don't ask me to spell it, but you'll find it. And what she has said, which is true for all losses that we have experienced and will, God forbid, in life, is the attitude of how we can move. And the question then is for you to think of, do we move on, or do we move forward? And in graduate school and my doctorate, I studied grief a little bit, but not extensively, because it was high conflict divorce, and family issues that was most important to me. And grief counseling was not most important to me. Although grief is very much a part of someone who is no longer able to access their children or to maintain the marriage that they had and they thought was wonderful and loving and meaningful. But the question again is, do we move on or do we move forward? And the first answer I had to that question was posed to me by my father after my own divorce over 20 years ago. And it's amazing what divorce and child custody matters does to us, how it affects us, and how long it affects us. Well, my father said, don't look backwards because life doesn't go that way. Now, I struggled with that for a long time, but in my speaking, I frequently refer to the words of this man who survived the Depression, who survived World War II, and social problems as anti-Semitism in his community. And so does life move on or does it move forward? What Nora McInerney had said is that for her, in which she believes all who have lost a spouse, in her case, is to move forward. It's to incorporate that loss, not to deny it, but to welcome it, to maintain it, to carry it. You cannot dispel it. Why? Because it happened. And so it becomes part of us. Our relationship is part of us. If we divorce and we have children, and those children have been distanced from us because of the other parent who has been brainwashing or manipulating the system or pushing us away from the children, this is a loss, and we carry it. I've carried mine every day for 22 years. It's not an easy thing. Loss is not an easy thing. It's nothing that is a benefit to us. It's not entertainment. It's tragedy. So how do you deal with tragedy? Each one of us deals with it differently. But Nora's question, do we move on or do we move forward, is very interesting because moving forward, as I said, and as Nora said, embraces the loss and allowed her to be more aware, to be more compassionate and more capable of giving love, which I thought was quite an astounding statement. Quite astounding. Because when I studied psychology in grad school, when I studied grief, it was not looking at how life changes, increases our capacity, particularly when we've lost. But it is felt to increase the capacity of our ability to do good, of our ability to be more compassionate, to be more loving, to be more positive, and in all kinds of relationships with people. So if we are moving forward or moving on, I think it's a critical question that we need to ask. It appears that the right question or the right answer is to move forward by embracing that loss. Again, acknowledging it, recognizing that you strive for other goals now, but only with help can you get there. And that experience that you had is part and parcel of who we are today. For those of you that are on dating sites, and I've been on a fair amount over these many years, and on and off and on and off due to frustration and just disingenuine response, and just finding it uncomfortable for the most part. But people have spoken about baggage. They don't want anyone with baggage. So these are clearly people who are either in denial or people who are unable to move forward. They are moving on. And if they're moving on, they are then carrying the baggage which they're not conscious of, but it's in their subconscious. Let me refer to a few other items before I conclude this meeting, if you don't mind. Louise Hay, I want to refer to once again. She founded in the 1950s a church, and that church is called the First Church of Religious Science in New York City, and it was based on her belief, which she has spoken about as a public speaker until her passing a few years ago. She's written about, and that is the transformative power of thought, and that is not a unique concept, but it was stated, and what we need to do is really get with the program and realize, and as Paul said, you can't deny your own baggage going in. That's true. You don't deny. It takes a hell of a lot of work to deny, to mask. It's far less to be authentic, to be yourself, to know what you're carrying, to know what your experience is, but being able to move forward with that experience. And it's not just a so-called experience. It's a life incident. It's a transforming part of our life. And we must learn to deal with it and not let that transformative part of our life control us. It cannot control us. It must be only a part of us. We need to acknowledge it and we need to embrace it. But it is not us. It doesn't define us in our entirety, and it doesn't pull us into actions that would be damaging for us. Rather, it is extremely important that we realize that any loss must be managed, and it also must be something that we can bring forward without shame. The University of Michigan Medical School has a website, and they were speaking about they were speaking about stress and the effect of stress. I'm looking at Paul's comment. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, which is a Louise Hay comment and belief, and it is true. And any psychologist will tell you that their role, if they're asked, is to help you navigate, to help you achieve more contentment, to resolve issues that manifest for you, and also that allows you to be more confident and comfortable, to have a better quality of life, even though, although you have had, these losses. So when is it enough? It's enough when you have everything that has manifested for you in a way that you are able to move forward. Not without this experience and not without this the tragedy we may have, but to be able to achieve, as I said earlier today, what it is that you're seeking to achieve. So what is it the University Medical School said, University of Michigan? The effect of stress on your body, the relationship that stress has with your body, is really a dynamic one. It's a dyad, really. The power of stress and the power of your body are diametrically opposed, but our goal is to harness them. If stress is not cared for, I'm not saying denial, but if it's not cared for, then what's happening, it's going to cause more metabolic changes. It's going to cause more mental health difficulties. It's going to increase your blood pressure. It's going to make you tense. And what will then happen is that you're going to subject yourself to be more vulnerable. And so if we can look at managing our stress, not the cause for it. Again, we need to allow what we're feeling, absolutely. But what we're feeling can be channeled in ways that are damaging to us and open us up to tragic thoughts and illness. So we can manage. There are ways that we can manage stress, but we need to, for many reasons. But our physical health as well as our mental health are responsible to and directly related to how we manage our stress. And it's not in denying what we're feeling. I am not saying this at all. On the other side, we have and can have physical conditions that can lead to stress. I've been dealing with an asthma issue for 15 years. And although it had come about because of bronchitis that I suffered one winter in Connecticut, where I'm from, asthma needs to be controlled. And I've had 3 very severe asthma attacks, and I was out of town, and I didn't have two times I did not have the nebulizers that were necessary. And I won't tell you more, but it was devastating and frightening. And when you have conditions, if you have physical conditions that you can control, you reduce your stress. Thank goodness I'm able to reduce at least stress caused by my fear of an aggravated asthma condition, and also my asthma condition has been controlled better because I think I've been better able to manage my own personal, emotional, and psychological stress. So the mind-body connection is tremendous. It's tremendous, and we need to be aware of that. Certainly, we need to know why we must pause whenever anything comes up to challenge us. If you're a targeted parent, your anxiety, your fear, your anger, all these hostile emotions, I call these hostile emotions because these are emotions which can either help protect us in dangerous situations, or they can damage us. And if you are an alienated parent, if you're a targeted parent, and feeling the loss of your children and feeling anger and fear of the system and anxiety and disbelief and so many other negative emotions, what we should do is step back and say, okay, what is it that we can do? Remember, if we ask, when will it end? How do we channel? How do we control our emotions? How do we control that? The procedure that is affecting us and afflicting us. How do we do this? Again, there are steps that we can take, going back to what I said 45 minutes ago. There are steps we can take if we have people or resources that can assist us in creating that means of controlling that journey. Then we will have a better chance of succeeding and achieving what we want. But it's not easy. Parental alienation is very difficult. But this is from Amy Baker. And those of you who may know of Amy Baker, or if you know of parental alienation, you need to know Amy Baker. She's been one of the most prolific writers about it. She is an international resource. And but I want to give you a couple of steps that she had said if you are a targeted parent. And one thing, the first thing she said in this article, which is called "What Can a Parent Targeted by Parental Alienation Do?" This is published in November 8th, 2008. If you email me, I'll send you the link. But she said, document the sources of concern, including the specific dates, times, and events. Document. And the first thing you know if you're in litigation, that you should know, is document, and then document, and then document. You must document. Courts of law are based on facts. They want facts. They don't care about your emotional responses unless they're leading to aggravated behaviors. They care about the facts. You need to document. Secondly, she said, hold himself or herself to the highest possible standard of parenting. If you have some access to your children, take the high road. Do not bring the other parent into conversation. Do not reference the other parent. Do not talk about the child's relationship to anything in the other household. Be the parent you want to be by giving love, by listening, by interacting with your child. Thirdly, Dr. Baker said, do not engage in lengthy debates with the child about the alienation. We want so much, if we've been wronged, we want to prove ourselves right. We want to prove ourselves correct. Don't argue with your kids. Argue with the court. Don't argue with your kids. Your kids are conflicted. If you've done any reading about parental alienation, whether it's Childress or Gardner or Baker, many people, Doug Darnell, so many people. Whether you've done any reading, kids cannot have dual loyalty. They cannot. Don't force them into it. Don't force them into it. You don't have to reveal anything about your relationship with their mother or father prior to the divorce or prior to the child custody or the split. You don't have to discuss anything that is not intellectually at their level. But answer them. But don't argue parental alienation. Don't do this. 4, maintain empathy for the child no matter how disagreeable they behave. And I want to paraphrase this. No matter how ugly the child behaves, the real child is still somewhere deep inside, needing the targeted parent to love him. The child is conflicted, but if the child is spending some time with you, the child has agreed to do that and wants to do that. They may not want to show it. You have to dig that. You've got to understand that. And 5, she says, never give up hope. Even the most alienated child can eventually have a realization and want to reestablish contact with the targeted parent. 6, become educated and get support. I remember months ago I got an inquiry by an attorney who wanted to know what should he read with respect to parental alienation. And I got very flipped and very angry that they did no research about parental alienation, which has been documented, has been written about for more than 25 years. There's 25 years of literature. Just Google parental alienation, bingo. You're going to find those that have written so extensively about parental alienation. But I was wrong to jump on his throat, as disappointed and surprised as I was, because I shared information. But you see, if we have information about any challenge, it will help us to, as Nora McInerney said, move forward with loss, with knowledge, with acceptance. And none of that is easy. But with all of that, we will be able to move forward and embrace new experiences, be certainly changed by the losses we have, but have a new ability to be sensitized to what loss means for others and to what loss means for ourselves. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for being with me today. When will it end? When will my show end? Hopefully it'll get bigger before and better. But I'm grateful for all of you who have these very important comments. Diane, children do not forget. They do not forget. And one day you will be surprised, because the chances are greater than 30%. You will be surprised with reunification. And for the other 70%, there may yet be some surprises. I keep praying for that, for myself as well as for everyone. So I want to wish you all well. Have a great evening. Do something kind for yourself. Do something kind for yourself. And sometimes doing kindness for others is doing kind for ourselves. Stay well, and thank you, Joe. Bye now. Hope to see you next week. And write me if you have questions, comments. I really welcome them. Email me, please. Thank you. Good night.